Now, I've already apologized to the parents over and over again.
I
don't apologize to you. Don't apologize to you.
Attorney Norm Pattis called it strategic.
We thought it was vicious and uncalled for and gratuitous.
But at the same time, the plaintiff's attorneys called for a recess to determine how they'd orchestrate the rest of the day.
You think I could book that for like the weekend of the 14th when the soundtrack comes out? If so, bump somebody. All right, thanks. I love you, man. Bye. I got my MTV out. Savage! I'm a savage! Oh! I'm a savage! Whatever I want, I'm going to get! Whatever I want, I have to get!
And you're confident on these cases. You don't think you're going to be behind a defendant table throughout the entire campaign, crippled and unable to campaign?
You know, if I am, it's going to show what a fake deal it all is. It's all fake. It's all just fake stuff.
Do you want it televised?
In order to interfere with the election. This was election interference at the highest level.
One person responsible for this nightmare, and he's acknowledged and he brags about it, Donald Trump.
Chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce traveled with the president. Good morning, Mary.
2020 rape conviction against former media mogul Harvey Weinstein was thrown out by New York's highest court today.
Now to another big headline. Arizona's governor plans to sign a bill today repealing a 160-year-old abortion ban.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Patriot News Hour with your host, Joshua Capilla, the independent with conservative values, fighting the liberals, protecting the homeland from terrorists, domestic and foreign. Ladies and gentlemen, we're not going to stop. We're not going to stop. We're going to tell the truth. They want to suppress the information. They want to spread the lies, but we're holding everyone accountable. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Patriot News Hour. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is 8:13 a.m. and it is June 30th. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot to talk about. I'm fired up. 3 days ago, the presidential debate happened, the first one, and this thing was an utter train wreck. It was an utter disaster. Can you believe what happened in this presidential debate? You have Biden attacking Trump, Trump attacking Biden, and at the very end, they're trying to compare golf handicaps. Why the world dictators like King Jong-un is drinking his cognac, watching his porn, smoking his cigars, and Putin is leveling Ukraine. And they're watching the spectacle known as the United States of America. And before this debate even started, I told my spouse, Tiffany, I said, we need to get ready because the biggest circus that has ever happened in the United States of America that you cannot get on a Netflix special or Amazon Prime will be on TV. And it was fascinating. I was embarrassed for the country. I was embarrassed for both. And the worst part of this situation is there's going to be people rushing to the aid of both of these candidates, the one running, Donald Trump, and the incumbent, Joe Biden. And they're going to defend them no matter what they do. Trump is basically a criminal. He's had a lot of criminal activity, a criminal past. He's been indicted. He was convicted of so many felonies. He's accused of raping women, sexually assaulting women, and Biden nails him to the wall on that. Donald, he attacks Biden on his cognitive decline, on his mental acuity, on taking a test to see if he's fit to be the president. We have a lot of issues here, ladies and gentlemen. There was a lot going on. There was a lot wrong, and I'm very disappointed on how this debate went. And I know people just love Donald Trump. No matter what this man does, they will support him. He could have a gun in his hand, recorded on video, committing a crime, and they will literally just pull the lever for him because that's how much they love him. And the same goes for Joe Biden. The problem is both of these candidates, reveal the moral degradation in the United States of America. And as I watch these two individuals, I'm thinking to myself, is this what the country has elected? Is this how far we have gone off the proverbial cliff in morality? And is this what we want as a nation, as a country? Even our leaders in the recent past do not act like this. Ladies and gentlemen, what I want to do is take this debate and I want to go line by line. I want to go soundbite by soundbite. And I want to fact check. I want to give you relevant information. And I want to tell you who's lying, which is going to be both of them. And I want to tell you who's telling the truth on some things, which is going to be both of them. And I want you to think independently, not as a right and not as a person on the left. And that's why I call myself an independent with conservative values, ladies and gentlemen. So what I want to do is get into this first soundbite about groceries when Joe Biden is asked about groceries. And then I want to get into housing and why housing looks the way it looks. So ladies and gentlemen, I only got one question. Are you ready?
Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here. Let's begin the debate, and let's start with the issue that voters consistently say is their top concern, the economy. President Biden, inflation has slowed, but prices remain high. Since you took office, the price of essentials has increased. For example, a basket of groceries that cost $100 then now costs more than $120. And typical home prices have jumped more than 30%. What do you say to voters who feel they are worse off under your presidency than they were under President Trump?
We got to take a look at what I was left when I became president and what Mr. Trump left me. We had an economy that was in free fall. The pandemic was so badly handled. Many people were dying. All he said was, it's not that serious. Just inject a little bleach into your arm. You'll be all right. The economy collapsed. There were no jobs. Unemployment rate rose to 15%. It was terrible. And so what we had to do is try to put things back together again. And that's exactly what we began to do. We created 15,000 new jobs. We brought out the position where we have 800,000 new manufacturing jobs. But there's more to be done. There's more to be done. Working class people are still in trouble. I come from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I come of a household where the kitchen table, if the things weren't able to be met during the month, it was a problem. Price of eggs, the price of gas, the price of housing, the price of a whole range of things. That's why I'm working so hard to make sure I deal with those problems. And we're going to make sure that we reduce the price of housing. We're going to make sure we build 2 million new units. We're going to make sure we cap rents so corporate greed can't take over. The combination, what I was left with in corporate greed, is the reason why we're in this problem right now. In addition to that, we're in a situation where if you take a look at all that was done in his administration, he didn't do much at all. By the time he left, things were in chaos. Literally chaos. And so we put things back together. We created, I said, those jobs. We make sure we had a situation where we brought down the price of prescription drugs, which is a major issue for many people, to $15 for a insulin shot as opposed to $400. No senior has to pay more than $200 for any drug, all the drugs they can include beginning next year. And the situation is and we're going to make that available to everybody, to all Americans. So we're working to bring down the price around the kitchen table, and that's what we're going to get done.
Thank you. President Trump?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, before we jump back to President Trump, we really need to take a look at this situation and fact check it. We're going to read an article by the Heritage Foundation, and it's dated May 28th, 2024. So let's start at the top, shall we? If you're having trouble affording groceries, don't expect sympathy from the White House. In a recent interview, President Biden was told that the food prices are up over 30% on his watch, but he casually dismissed this fact, claiming that people have money to pay those elevated prices. This doesn't just demonstrate Mr. Biden's tone deafness to the plight of Americans who struggle to afford necessities like groceries. It shows his ignorance of his own administration's data. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Average weekly paychecks have increased about $150 under Mr. Biden, or 14.1% in roughly 3 years. Normally, that would be good cause for the celebration, but not for the inflation environment of Bidenomics. Now, ladies and gentlemen, $150, that's not very much money. And I'll give you an example. So I'm not a big shopper. I was back in the day, and I have groceries delivered to my house. Hey, I'm one of the guilty ones. And my wife ordered right around $600 of groceries, and I didn't know what she actually spent. So I'm watching a movie, laying down in the bed, the doorbell rings. Honey, get up and help me. I walk over to the door. We take everything and we put it in the kitchen. And my response was, "Where's the rest of it?" And she said, "Excuse me, what are you talking about?" I said, "Where's the rest of it? I'm not trying to be rude. This is 600 and whatever dollars worth of groceries." She says, "Well, that's all it gets us nowadays. 10 years ago, you could get your toiletries, your toilet paper, you could get your cabinets filled up, your refrigerator filled up, your freezers filled up." And that just was such a prominent realization to me when I said, "Are you kidding me?" And there are many of you right now listening that's probably saying, "Man, I wish I could afford 600 and something dollars in groceries." And I sympathize with you. I sympathize with you because a lot of American families, I should say, are struggling deeply. And it is an exorbitant amount of money to be able to feed yourself nowadays. Now let's continue reading this article. Wasteful government spending adds up, and all of us pay the price because prices have risen an average of 19.3% during Mr. Biden's tenure. The average real or inflation-adjusted weekly paycheck has shrunk about $50, or 4.4%. Today's largest paychecks by less, and consumers are being squeezed by higher prices everywhere. This drop in purchasing power has many families relying on credit cards to make ends meet, pushing outstanding balances up to $1.1 trillion, even while the interest rates on that debt is at a record high. But if you think about this, ladies and gentlemen, combined with the credit card debt at 29%, and the economy and banks tightening up the money and the Feds raising the interest rates, and you're already hurting with not so good credit or bad credit or just an all-around struggling American, combined with the 40-year high of inflation, this is crippling the average American. What is middle class these days? And I was sitting with a politician recently, and that politician expressed that you need $120,000 a year to make it in Arizona. That a family of four needs around $220,000 a year to be okay and to be middle class. Think about that. When the average job's paying $40,000, $50,000 a year, when John Deere is shutting down the plant with mass layoffs and exporting jobs to Mexico, that is 100% un-American. Let's continue to read, shall we? Contrary to the president's claim, it doesn't sound like America has the money to pay 30% more for food. As Americans put more necessities on their credit cards, finance charges alone have exploded to over $200 billion per year. If people can't afford the rent or food, they simply can't afford mounting interest costs. So there's the rich exploiting the average American consumer with usury. Now, I can just imagine hearing some individuals say, "Well, you're not a capitalist, Mr. Capilla. You're a patriot. I'm an independent with conservative values." And I am a capitalist, but I'm a capitalist that promotes regulation. The American people should not be allowed to be gouged and make the rich richer. I am not an unfeathered capitalist. I'm for consumer protections for the American worker, for the American people. Let's continue to read. Those higher interest costs can be seen on mortgages, student loans, and car loans. Between these higher finance charges and the lost buying power from declining real earnings, a typical American family lost $8,100 of their annual income compared to when Mr. Biden took office. Now let's stop right there. Student loans. We know there was a lot of bad student loans. We know that they were in default for a long time. We know people were getting gouged on them. And it's amazing to me, talking to some people on the right, even those that call themselves libertarians, that they still talk bad about Biden, but then they took his student loan forgiveness. That's just an oxymoron to me. And like I said before, I'm not a supporter of Biden and I'm not a supporter of Trump. I will equally take the political paddle out and spank both of them. So let's continue. It's no wonder people struggle to get by amid the cost of living crisis. Some major expenses, like a home renovation, can be put off in hard times, but food is a necessity, and there's no avoiding these higher prices. This hits lower income families particularly hard because consumers shift their buying habits when inflation is high to save money. As middle and even upper income shoppers buy lower priced items for from their grocer to save money, there is a surge in demand for foodstuffs that were disproportionately bought by the lower income households. Disproportionately. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Biden lied, your wallet died. And here we go with this last excerpt from this article. Eggs are just one example of this phenomenon. They have historically been a relatively inexpensive source of protein, vitamin D, and other nutrients. As more Americans swap purchases of things like beef with eggs to save money, the higher demand for eggs has pushed prices up much faster than the average inflation rate for food. The key reason why egg prices are up 40.9% under Bidenomics. And eggs aren't the only thing at the grocery store that will induce sticker shock. Prices of other consumer staples such as flour, sugar, and butter have skyrocketed, and the price under Mr. Biden's tenure increasing 38.3%, 30.7%, and 35.9%, respectively. Americans' incomes haven't risen nearly as quickly as food prices have during the Biden administration. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to talk about some things. There's a lot going on in this debate. People can't afford food. They can't afford their rent. The rent's over and exceeds 100% of their income. And one of the big problems here, which I got a big political bone to pick with Biden, is over illegal immigration. And Trump had some good points on that, and he was right about that, and Biden could not defend himself on that. Think about the resource strain put on the average daily American when illegal immigrants come to this country. Gas, food, the power grid, the water, and how much inflation ensues and how prominent inflation rises due to more resources being used by illegal immigrants. And we are a humane country, and we do believe in asylum, and we do believe in helping individuals around the world. But ladies and gentlemen, we cannot continue to sustain this. And another issue is home prices. Home prices are unaffordable. And I want to pick up from CNBC, and this article was written March 19, 2024. We're going to touch base on this, and then we're going to shoot right over to President Trump. This is going to be a long show. It's not your average show because we got a lot of information to touch because you need to be aware of who you're voting for. Home prices rose 2.4 times faster than inflation since 1960, study finds. What that means for home buyers. Before we jump into this, I have done real estate for many years, and I've had clients where I had to basically walk them through a house, and we ran the numbers, and I said, you simply probably need to move back home. You can't afford this. You don't qualify. You know, we've got you over to the mortgage lender. You don't meet the numbers. And we tried to help these individuals, some of these clients. And I have a fiduciary responsibility to help clients. Second of all, one of the big problems is just the cost to maintain and upkeep the house, right? I tell people marriage, having children, and your mortgage will be the 3 biggest decisions you will make in your life, besides your faith, which will be number 1. But the situation is, if you buy a house and you're in your 50s or 40s and you're paying $3,500 a month, and that's a 30-year note, you're going to be dead before you can even make this happen. And you got to look at the industry you're working on, the outsourcing, and everything else. So just because you can get into a home doesn't mean you can afford the home. So these rates by the feds are setting are so high, the principal is so high, It's unaffordable. And then you'll get the average mortgage guy realtor saying this. Yeah, but you know what, Mrs. and Mrs. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, the home interest rates back in the 80s were 20%, 15%. And that's the little switch bait scam they try to pull when they're selling. The fact of the matter is, yeah, the house was $50,000 back then, $60,000. It has more than quadrupled. They're running up to $600,000 now. Your average medium's in the 400s somewhere. And sometimes it's not even what you want. So let's continue to read this article because I'm actually digressing here. Why inflation is 10 times higher now than 60 years ago. Home prices are 24 times more expensive, a new study found. If home prices increase at the same rate as inflation since 1963, the median price of a typical house in the U.S. would be $177,511, according to a new research report by Cleaver, a real estate data company. In reality, the cost of a typical house in the U.S. is closer to $500,000. The median price for a home in the U.S. is $412,778, according to new Redfin data. Today, it's harder for adults to buy homes than it was for their parents' generation, said Matt Brannon, a data writer at Cleaver and the author of the report. Now, this is really important. This is really interesting, and I'm going to tell you why. I live in a new housing community. And when I first moved in, before the housing crisis really hit, me and my wife went back on a little debate, and I said, we're going to move here. She says, no, we're not going to move there. I said, we need to. We got about a 4-month window. Well, I don't know about that. Well, we got the house, and the house doubled literally overnight. And when that house doubled, well, let's say before it, my home doubled, the neighborhood, the streets were pretty much flush and clean and pristine. You basically had 1 to 2 cars in every home. As soon as this crisis hit and inflation hit, my street is jam-packed. Some streets you can barely maneuver your way through because all the children have moved back home in their 30s and even in their 40s. Adult children have moved back home because we have a strain and we have an impact on the housing market on everyday families. It's just unaffordable when you compare it to the wages, the homes. So let's continue reading why home price growth has outpaced inflation. While mortgage rates have contributed to high costs, supply and demand have also affected the price growth of homes in the U.S., Brannon said. When demand for other consumer products comes up or when it increases, it's usually not too hard for people to scale up supply, Brannon said, whereas houses take months to build at a time. Now, we don't want to read this whole article, but what we want to say is we have a severe problem in our hand. And in Arizona, the governor signed a bill into law to build casitas, right? And new zoning laws where you can build a structure, a guest house in your backyard. And in some cases, this has backfired. And I know I'm diverting a little bit here, ladies and gentlemen, but I want to play a soundbite of a woman that describes the housing crisis and what it's going to do to her personal property value of her home and what's it doing to her life personally. So let's get into this. Then we'll switch gears. We'll hit Trump. We'll hear what he has to say, and we'll dissect that. Probably a lot of lies mixed with a little bit of truth. So, ladies and gentlemen, I only have one question. Are you ready?
Up in a matter of 6 hours.
Kelly Schultz is still in shock over what her neighbor is building next door.
I cried and I cried and I cried some more and I cried some more. But yeah, it was devastation, I think is a good term.
The Phoenix mom and nurse practitioner has spent the past week watching helplessly as a new guest house goes up on the other side of her back wall overlooking her swimming pool.
We didn't know the laws until this happened. We didn't realize someone could build so close to our property line. It does feel really close, and it does feel like people are maybe infringing on our privacy a little bit, yeah.
Back in September, the Phoenix City Council passed a new law that makes it easier for homeowners to build a guest house or casita in their backyard. The move was made as a way to address the affordable housing crisis.
It looks about 15 feet, yes.
Schultz never imagined her neighbor's decision to build one would be such a disruption to her family. Not only do they have to look at the giant structure every day and worry about strangers looking into their yard, they now have concerns about their property value going down. They've lived in this house off Greenway and 40th Street since 2008.
We're very understanding about the plight of where we are in the real estate market. We understand that people cannot find housing, but this may not be the solution, because we're just crowding an already crowded city.
Arizona's family has learned the neighbor building this casita does have a permit and appears to be following all the guidelines for construction, which include being no more than 15 feet tall, less than 1,000 square feet, and at least 3 feet away from the block wall that divides the two properties.
Realistically,
Jim Waring was the only city council member to vote against the ordinance to expand the building of casitas.
I'm sorry, we have a Phoenician who's having this experience, but now that it's passed, I don't know that there's anything, my office or the city council can do about it.
The city of Phoenix has issued 131 ADU or guest house permits since last year, which means there may be other unhappy neighbors like Schultz dealing with an unwanted guest house.
We got a lot of really actually great advice from our neighbors about, increasing the wall, putting up hedges, new landscaping, things along those lines, but everything comes at a cost. At the end of the day, this is really, really close for comfort, and I need other Arizonans to know that if it happens to me, it can happen to them.
Thank you. President Trump?
We had the greatest economy in the history of our country. We have never done so well. Everybody was amazed by it. Other countries were copying us. We got hit with COVID. And when we did, we spent the money necessary so we wouldn't end up in a Great Depression, the likes of which we had in 1929. By the time we finished, so we did a great job. We got a lot of credit for the economy, a lot of credit for the military, and no wars and so many other things. Everything was rocking good. But the thing we never got the credit for, and we should have, is getting us out of that COVID mess. He created mandates. That was a disaster for our country. But other than that, we had given them back a country where the stock market actually was higher than pre-COVID, and nobody thought that was even possible. The only jobs he created are for illegal immigrants and bounce-back jobs, a bounce-back from the COVID. He has not done a good job. He's done a poor job, and inflation's killing our country. It is absolutely killing us.
Thank you. President Biden?
Well, look, the greatest economy in the world. He's the only one who thinks that, I think. I don't know anybody else who thinks he's the greatest economy in the world. And, the fact of the matter is that we found ourselves in a situation where his economy, he rewarded the wealthy. He had the largest tax cut in American history, $2 trillion. He raised a deficit larger than any president has in any one term. He's the only president other than Herbert Hoover who's lost more jobs than he had when he began, since Herbert Hoover. The idea that he did something that was significant, and the military, when he was president, they were still killing people in Afghanistan. He didn't do anything about that. When he was president, we were still finding ourselves in a position where you had a notion that we were this safe country. The truth is, I'm the only president this century that doesn't have this decade, that doesn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world like he did.
President Trump, I want to follow up if I can.
Am I allowed to respond to him?
Well, I'm going to ask you a follow-up. You can do whatever you want with the minute that we give you. I want to follow up. You want to impose a 10% tariff on all goods coming into the U.S. How will you ensure that that doesn't drive prices even higher?
It's not going to drive them higher. It's just going to cause countries that have been ripping us off for years, like China and many others, in all fairness to China, it's going to just force them to pay us a lot of money, reduce our deficit tremendously, and give us a lot of power for other things. But he made a statement. The only thing he was right about is I gave you the largest tax cut in history. I also gave you the largest regulation cut in history. That's why we had all the jobs. And the jobs went down, and then they bounced back, and he's taking credit for bounce-back jobs. You can't do that. He also said he inherited 9% inflation. No, he inherited almost no inflation, and it stayed that way for 14 months. and then it blew up under his leadership because they spent money like a bunch of people that didn't know what they were doing, and they don't know what they were doing. It was the worst, probably the worst administration in history. There's never been. And as far as Afghanistan is concerned, I was getting out of Afghanistan, but we were getting out with dignity, with strength, with power. He got out. It was the most embarrassing day in the history of our country's life.
President Trump, over the last 8 years, under both of your administrations, the national debt soared to record highs. And according to a new nonpartisan analysis, President Trump, your administration approved $8.4 trillion in new debt, while so far, President Biden, you've approved $4.3 trillion in new debt. So, former President Trump, many of the tax cuts that you signed into law are set to expire next year. You want to extend them and go even further, you say. With the U.S. facing trillion-dollar deficits and record debt, why should top earners and corporations pay even less in taxes than they do now?
Because the tax cuts spurred the greatest economy that we've ever seen just prior to COVID. And even after COVID, it was so strong that we were able to get through COVID much better than just about any other country. But we spurred, that tax spurred. Now, when we cut the taxes, as an example, the corporate tax was cut down to 21% from 39%, plus beyond that. We took in more revenue with much less tax, and companies were bringing back trillions of dollars back into our country. The country was going like never before, and we were ready to start paying down debt. We were ready to start using the liquid gold right under our feet, the oil and gas right under our feet. We were going to have something that nobody else has had. We got hit with COVID. We did a lot to fix it. I gave him an unbelievable situation with all of the therapeutics and all of the things that we came up with. We gave him something great. Remember, more people died under his administration, even though we had largely fixed it. More people died under his administration than our administration, and we were right in the middle of it, something which a lot of people don't like to talk about. But he had far more people dying in his administration. He did the mandate, which is a disaster, mandating it. The vaccine went out. He did a mandate on the vaccine, which is the thing that people most objected to about the vaccine. And he did a very poor job, just a very poor job. And I will tell you, not only poor there, but throughout the entire world, we're no longer respected as a country. They don't respect our leadership. They don't respect the United States anymore. We're like a third world nation between weaponization of his election, trying to go after his political opponent, all of the things he's done. We've become like a third world nation, and it's a shame. The damage he's done to our country, and I'd love to ask him, and will, why he allowed millions of people to come in here from prisons, jails, and mental institutions to come into our country and destroy our country.
Donald J. Trump is now President of the United States. President Obama for the
what a great honor to be able to introduce for the first time ever anywhere the 45th President of the United States of America, Donald.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the circus at large. This is just crazy. It's fascinating. You got to remember, I'm not an R, I'm not a D, I'm an independent with conservative values. And what that means, ladies and gentlemen, is I think for myself. And just how both parties, constituents, cover up for anything they do shocks me every single time. And I don't just play sound bites of the woman screaming when Trump got elected because somehow I favor and love Biden more. I'm an equal opportunity basher. I just want to say some things here that, especially on the right, the evangelical right, and I am a minister, I'm a pastor, I got a master's degree, a doctoral student, and what fascinates me and actually kind of repulses me, not kind of, but it just does, is when the far Christian right will not recognize anything Trump does. From how he did his brother Freddie, how he did his family, how he basically burned all the real estate documents when he was committing fraud. You can read the book that was written about him. There's a couple of them. I'll leave them up to you by his own family member, and how he's conducted his narcissistic mentality in what he's done to people. And you will hear Biden lash out about him on his commentary, and I will deal with that. I will deal with Biden's immigration issue. So we will get to them sound bites when the time is appropriate. So there's thousands of people listening. Don't shut the program off. Don't go somewhere else. Listen and think for yourself, and remember that I am not a Republican or a Democrat. I'm an independent. So here we go. So, what the heck is going on with this coronavirus, right? You have people on the extreme side saying, you know what, you're a walking Bluetooth system, you're magnetic, you're going to turn into a reptile. I mean, this stuff gets absolutely crazy, and it verges on stupidity to a very, very, very high degree. There was people walking around, hey, you're going to be a magnet, you're going to be this, you're going to be that. It's absurd. And even if it was true, if the conspiracy runs that deep, what is anybody going to do about it? You're a sitting duck on top of a fence within a 10-power scope. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's continue on and talk about this coronavirus. And let's talk about Trump's economy. Did he create this huge economy? Was it all his? Did he do it all by himself? Or did he inherit some of this economy of success from Obama? Because you got to remember, there is a situation at hand to where incumbent presidents inherit all the past policy of the past presidents. And Americans have a very short attention span. I think my Frenchie, Stella, has a longer attention span in many cases. And please don't take offense to that, but people have short selective memories. So let's go into this Joint Economic Committee, Congressman Don Bayer, Vice Chair, and let's go over this committee information here, and let's kind of see if Trump is telling the truth, and let's do a fact check. So here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready? Okay, we're going to start at the top. Did Trump create or inherit the strong economy? The U.S. economy is in its 11th year of expansion with exceptionally low unemployment and robust job creation. There are signs that the economy may be weakened due to the trade war and other factors, but so far it has proven resilient. President Donald Trump claims credit for the strong economy, saying that he inherited a disaster from President Barack Obama and that he accomplished an economic turnaround of historic proportions. However, the truth is, by the time he became president, the economy largely had recovered from the Great Recession and was nearing full strength. The question is whether President Trump's erratic policies will undermine the strong economy he inherited. There's a lot of lies going on. And it always fascinates me when a president says, I did all this myself. I did this myself. I created this myself. Or I never did this. I never did that. I mean, the Oval Office has to be the highest office of narcissism that's ever been established through world history in the modern day times. Because apparently everything good, all presidents have done it. Everything bad, they never touched it. So Trump did do some things which we can debate, which these big tax cuts, people call them trickle-down economics, fecal-down economics. The one at the bottom, the people at the bottom really don't receive anything, and the rich get richer, and the poor get poorer. And there's a lot of factors that go into that, and there's a lot of element of truth into that. I mean, you got on one hand jobs. Once you put a noose around them economically and create a huge tax burden, the employees usually take the brunt of that. They'll do mass layoffs. They will fire people. They will do furloughs. They will shrink their pay. The economy seems to just regress. But on the other hand, a lot of these guys are crooks and criminals, in my opinion, because they're anti-American. And if they can save a buck, they outsource the jobs to third world countries, which is just horrendous that you cannot be such an American to consider people more important than profit, even though you're maximizing and getting an exponential amount of profit. So let's go over some of these numbers. Obama was handed an economic catastrophe and prevented an even greater meltdown. When Barack Obama became president in 2009, the economy was experienced what former Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke called the worst financial crisis in global history, including the Great Depression In the last quarter of 2008, real GDP plummeted 8.4%, and the economy hemorrhaged more than 1.9 million jobs. We got to remember what happened in 2008. The Wall Street crooks, the Wall Street bandits, they basically just siphon money out of the middle class system by these mortgage-backed securities, and the Republicans repealed a lot of these consumer protections and regulations, and some Democrats were guilty of that too, and they broke up all these mortgages into hundreds of thousands of different vehicles where you didn't even know where your mortgage was at. I was actually caught up in that crisis, and when I heard the Goldman Sachs individual up there testifying in front of Congress that they're basically stealing from orphans and widows, and they didn't go to prison, and Lehman Brothers basically went out of business, I switched from a Republican that day to an independent, and it just disgusted me so much that the government bailed out all of these businesses. There was no responsibility, no accountability, and they rewarded them for their predatory lending, and they rewarded them for destroying the American economy. And Barack Obama put a lot of these measures back in place to protect the consumer. So let's continue on. So when Barack Obama became president in 2009, the economy was experiencing what Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke called the worst financial crisis in global history. In the last quarter of 2008, the real GDP plummeted 8.4%, and it hemorrhaged almost 2 million jobs. Barack Obama and congressional Democrats took strong action to rescue the economy, including implementing the stimulus, the Troubled Asset Relief Program, TARP, financial reform, and the auto bailout. In addition, the Federal Reserve lowered interest rates and took extraordinary measures to boost growth. Do you remember that, ladies and gentlemen? That was an extreme measure he did take, and he did the financial bailout, which I agree that needed to happen. We don't want to lose our good union jobs. We don't want to lose our auto industry here and let basically communist countries take over the auto market. We don't want to do that. And this was a domino effect from what the banks were doing, and they weren't regulated, and they were doing predatory lending. And this filtered all the way down to the average worker, and it impacted job growth, the economy, bankruptcies, the recession, everything. When you do bad business bent on the devil's playbook, it's not good for the economy. So let's continue on. Research by economists Alan Blinder and Mark Zendi found that without the multifaceted response, the recession would have lasted twice as long, job losses would have been twice as high, and the drop in GDP would have been more than 3 times what it was. Unemployment under Obama fell from a recession peak of 10%. That's huge, 10%. I remember them days. To only 4.7%. It has continued to drop and now is 3.5%. Job growth by the end of Obama administration, the economy had experienced 76 consecutive months of job growth. Since Trump became president, the streak has been extended to 111 months. So if we look at this, Trump is inheriting an economy from the recession, which Barack Obama did a great job with. He really did. No matter how much people hate him, they call him a name, they call him a Muslim, where's your birth certificate, and they do all this crazy stuff. He worked really hard to bring this economy back. Osama bin Laden was taken out under his presidency. He did try to get in the medical system and create Obamacare, which was the Health Care Act. That was a slur on him by the right. But people were able to obtain insurance. I mean, they charge $100 to change a bed sheet and $100 in aspirin, okay, at the hospital. And I'm probably off in some cases, but Americans are getting taken to the cleaners. They're being cleaned out with unrealistic, deceptive health care practices. And for all those saying, well, universal health care rations, we don't want universal health care. It rations. Can I tell you something? Why is it that they set high deductibles? Because of rationing healthcare. And I sat with an individual that was the creator of the founder of Phoenix Children's Hospital. He said, I have traveled to 13 countries, and you all have been fooled. We have one of the worst healthcare systems on the planet. Now, I take that in twofold, and I'm careful saying this. We really don't. We have one of the greatest healthcare systems on the planet, And it's one of the worst because people can't access it. They can't access it. They can't get the drugs they need. The pharmaceutical companies, they hold so much of a powerful position, and their lobbyists do, like the oil companies, that people would be left to die. And I understand that resources aren't unlimited, but there is a better way. There is a better way to do things and to help Americans have access. I'm not the guy that's going to say big oil, big pharma, they're all evil. They're letting the gates of hell open wide. But I'll tell you this that I do know. They do not want to release the grip on the policies that enslave the American people to be able to access these things. And the illegal immigration problem and the illegal immigrants that are coming over are making it more difficult. Now, let's look at this real quick, and then we're going to just divert from this. So I'm looking at a graph here, okay? And this graph even shows non-farm job growth from January 2008 to December 2019, and 277,000 jobs per month on average for Obama. And under Trump, there's 191,000 jobs per month average. That's from 2008 to 2018. Obama, he had a 4.7 unemployment rate. It came from a 10, and Trump, it filtered down to a 4.1 to 3.5. And the tax cuts basically right around 2018 spurred the economy to a degree to where it even dropped to 3.5% from 4.1. So it did have somewhat of a positive economic effect. And the average median household is 63,179 over Trump. So them are just some numbers that we went through. Basically, we're splitting hairs. It's not that easy when it's all said and when it's all done. And I don't blame any president 100% for trying to figure out how this country works, how the GDP works, how the economy works, because it's kind of like a cell in the body. It's so extraordinary. There's so many components that it's very, very hard because there's a cause and effect reaction by every single thing that happens when you make an economic choice or an economic policy, just like in a person's household. But we're doing pretty damn good as a country, aren't we, ladies and gentlemen? Another thing, too, is this coronavirus. This coronavirus was so hard to deal with, and not everybody knew what to do. For everybody, for the thousands of listeners that are listening to this show, I sympathize with your losses and when you lost an individual that you loved. Nobody knew what was going on. Nobody knew where this came from. And people speculate the Wuhan lab, China, a mutation of a gene from certain animals, DNA getting mixed together. But you know what the truth is? None of us really, really know 100% what the hell is going on, ladies and gentlemen. And this coronavirus had such an impact. I don't blame Biden, or I don't blame Trump for encountering such a disaster and trying to save lives and at the same time protect the economy. You have a lot of churches that are out there. The Nazis are here. The Democrats are Nazis. They're trying to shut down the economy. They're purposely trying to destroy the United States of America, destroy the planet. They want you all locked in your houses like China. They want drones flying by, and they basically want you to die in your home. And that is propaganda and nothing but madness. And it's reprehensible. To Republicans lashing out and getting angry and wanting to harm people physically over a freaking mask they were wearing. To a Democrat lashing out and wanting to attack a Republican for not wearing a mask. This is all crazy. We divide ourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, the politicians don't divide us. They don't have to. We divide ourselves off mass ignorance. So we're going to continue to go on, and we're going to talk about basically fact checking. Okay, real quick here. I told you this is a special show. It's going on for a long time. So let's continue. And this is a fact check by CNN Politics. And the first time in history I watched CNN basically throw a Democrat, Biden, under the bus, it was historic, and I never thought I would see that ever. But Biden was having cognitive decline. He was having onset dementia issues, and it was really, really disheartening. And it actually broke my heart to watch America put President Biden up there on the podium and make us witness that it was wrong and it was immoral. But here we go. Are you ready, ladies and gentlemen? President Donald Trump keeps saying that Democrat-run states are closed or shut down. Trump has repeatedly made such accusations in the last week. At the final president debate on Thursday night, he singled out New York, North Carolina, California, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and even claiming that Michigan is so restrictive it has been like prison. And in a Wisconsin interview last Saturday, Trump claimed that the state is shut down and locked down. Conclusion: Trump is exaggerating. Though all of these states still have some significant pandemic-related restrictions, they are all allowing people to leave their homes and allowing most businesses to operate. That statement's even a problem for me. Look at this statement. Though all these states still have some significant pandemic-related restrictions, that is going to impact business. That is going to shut business down. We're supposed to be past this already, right? And you're still allowing people to leave their homes and do business. I mean, this right here does not sound good to me right here. Like, we're supposed to be through this thing a long time ago. There is no official definition of shutdown or closure, so there is some subjectivity to our verdict here. Well, that's not good. If there's no definition, then what's the age of consent? You know, what's redlining in real estate? What's steering? What is discrimination? I mean, if we had no specific definition. So even this is hypocritical. It's hypocrisy. We need an actual reasonable working definition. And this thing is going to be around forever, just like the flu, and we should continue to move on. But it's still clear that Trump's vague words inflated the severity and the breadth of the Democratic governor's restrictions as he spoke. So it goes state by state. We're not going to go through this, ladies and gentlemen. But what I'm saying is, you know, Trump's not a complete 100% liar. Even though I'm not a fan of his, he's not lying about every single thing he says. And Biden's not lying about every single thing he says, but they both lie about a lot. Secondarily, do not attach and affiliate your moral compass to these two politicians, because it's going to keep spinning around and around and around and around, and you're going to lose your sense of direction. We should, as an American people, keep our politicians to a moral certitude of some type, and we should demand it. If we don't, ladies and gentlemen, our country will experience hemorrhaging politically. So what I'm going to do is go back to some sound bites, because I've been on a little bit of a extended talk here. So let's go to some more sound bites, and then we will end up talking about them on Thursday's presidential debate, ladies and gentlemen. So are you ready?
President Trump, we will get to immigration later in this block. President Biden, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to this question about the national debt.
He had the largest national debt of any president in a 4-year period, number one. Number two, that $2 trillion tax cut benefited the very wealthy. What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. Billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 billion, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our health care system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare because all of these people are coming in. They're putting them on Medicare. They're putting them on Social Security. They're going to destroy Social Security. This man is going to single-handedly destroy Social Security. These millions and millions of people coming in, they're trying to put them on Social Security. He will wipe out Social Security. He will wipe out Medicare. So he was right in the way he finished that sentence. And it's a shame. What's happened to our country in the last 4 years is not to be believed. Foreign countries, I'm friends with a lot of people, they cannot believe what happened to the United States of America. We're no longer respected. They don't like us. We give them everything they want, and they think we're stupid. They think we're very stupid people. What we're doing for other countries, and they do nothing for us. What this man has done is absolutely criminal.
Thank you, President Trump. Dana?
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to capitalize on something. We are already broke as a country. I mean, look at our GDP situation. Look at our national debt clock, trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. And I believe that national debt clock pretty much runs concurrent or a little bit more or less basically for our whole GDP. I mean, what are we worth as a country? $47-50 trillion. And I could be off. I mean, I'm not an economist, ladies and gentlemen, but our national debt keeps going and going and going. I wouldn't doubt it if every child born right now inherits anywhere from $300,000 to $500,000 just to try to pay off this national debt for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, 100 years, whatever it is. But we got a lot going on here. We got a lot going on with the claims. Now, Trump is saying you're going to bankrupt Social Security, you're going to bankrupt Medicare. Why would he say something like that? These individuals are both guilty on what they did to the system. And I mean, I should say parties, not individuals. But let's look at it. I ask myself this question as an American that pays into Social Security that receives a statement back to me that says how much I contributed since my legal working age. And they keep raising the bar on our Social Security. I do not want to be in diapers working at Walmart, never being able to retire and die standing up because the politicians keep stealing our money. It's supposed to be in a lockbox. It was supposed to be saved, and all they did was balance the budget or pay bills with money that wasn't theirs, which that's called stealing. Right? So they're accusing each other of this. So my question is this: how are we going to get all of these individuals over here when they come to our country illegally? And how are we supposed to maintain fiscal responsibility with our Social Security and Medicare and our healthcare system when undocumented illegal immigrants come over here and put strain on our system? How do we pay for that? How do we keep something physically sound when people keep accessing and utilizing the resources and they're undocumented and they're illegal immigrants? This isn't the goodwill and good nature that I'm questioning of the United States and taking care of people that seep in between the cracks and get here and claim asylum, and some people that make it. We have an open invitation border policy under Joe Biden. And Joe Biden tries to say, well, I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to do that. The Border Patrol endorsed me. But when he's asked the questions on this debate, why he's destroying the country, he will not answer. And as an American that is not a fan of Donald Trump by any means, I can't sit here and say Joe Biden's illegal immigration policy is not destroying our country. And it amazes me that the right and left, no matter what their politician does, they've actually idolized them and made them a god, and they worship them. Let's change the objective from worship to holding these individuals accountable, because it's bad news all the way around. So we will not be able to keep our social safety net intact, even as we're discussing policy and it affects our social safety net, if as the American parties, the Republican and Democrats, they don't stop stealing our money, number one. And number two, letting a mass amount of illegal immigration affect our country. And we don't start regulating these corporate marauders, and yes, have them pay their fair share of taxes, because it's not right when a billionaire gets $500 million back like Jeff Bezos and they don't pay taxes. And you know what amazes me is all these people that are complaining about, you know what, it's unfair, we need tax cuts. They start their businesses with help of the federal government, these mega corporations, by getting tax cuts. Jeff Bezos did the same thing. Elon Musk did the same thing. They got rich off the back of the government, off of taxpayers' dollars. And then they want to eliminate the Fair Labor Standard Act, and they don't want any oversight of their businesses. Meanwhile, the Amazon guys are driving around peeing in bottles and defecating in bags. Come on now. Being watched with cameras with an invasion of privacy. What are we doing as a country, ladies and gentlemen? Let's get our act together as a people. How Joe Biden and Donald Trump border policies compare. June 4th by the BBC by Bernard Devenseman. So here we go, and let's read this. And then we're going to hit a sound bite. We're going to hit it hard. We're full throttle right now. Just after taking office, U.S. President Joe Biden vowed to put an end to what he deemed the moral and ethical shame of Donald Trump's immigration policies. The Trump administration has adopted a strict border policy, and the Biden White House promised a more humane approach. We'll just get into that. Obama is the one who built the kids with cages, putting them behind them fences and all that. That wasn't a good thing. Okay, so let's spread the blame all the way around while we're at it. Of the hundreds of immigration actions the Biden White House has taken on the file, dozens have been aimed at reversing and undoing the policies of the predecessor. But the Democratic president has faced criticism both from immigration advocates who say his policies are unduly harsh and from Republican political foes who say he has not done enough. So this is how it compares. What Trump did in March 2020, at the beginning of COVID-19 pandemic, the Trump administration invoked Title 42, a controversial state law that meant as a public health measure. Now, this is a thing. Why should that be controversial? If COVID is such a big deal, we don't need individuals coming on that have not been vetted onto our land, not knowing if they're going to spread disease. I don't care what country you're from. That's not controversial. It's good policy, BBC. The policy allowed U.S. authorities to swiftly expel migrants, including asylum seekers, at the border. Nearly 400,000 people were detained and expelled between its implementation and on January 2021, when Trump left the White House. Even at the height of the pandemic, Title 42 came under frequent criticism from those who argued the policy allowed the U.S. to expel asylum seekers without any legal process. Human Rights Watch, for example, said the policy was illegal and violates human rights to those subjected to it. And in some cases, it probably did. And I wouldn't doubt it. And I wouldn't be so naive and ignorant to say, yeah, you know what? Not a good thing. But we needed that measure. What Biden did, he defended keeping Title 42 in place, using the pandemic as justification. Over 2 million people were expelled using Title 42 authority between January 2021 and 11th of May 2023, when it, alongside the declared U.S. coronavirus public health emergency, expired. So let me ask you this. I just read you an article that some governors have implemented restrictions on businesses and some can't even operate due to the coronavirus. Well, if it's such that big of a deal nationwide, why did we basically drop Title 42? Why would we do that? Because that is a diametrically opposed point of views. So why did we get rid of it if coronavirus is still such a big deal? And it is in some people's lives, and it is to average day Americans. We're still trying to figure this out. But you can't just pick both sides of an issue when you're a politician, even though they're great at doing it. To replace it, U.S. immigration authorities unveiled a carrot and a stick approach that encourages legal pathways while also implementing strict penalties for those who cross illegally. Who's going to care about strict penalties if, in the first place, the very fact they're crossing illegally, right? That's an oxymoron right there. The strategy included opening regional processing centers in Latin America to help migrants apply to come to the U.S. and expanded access to CBP-1, an app for migrants to schedule an asylum appointments. Well, a lot of them just schedule it and they bail on them. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to jump ahead because we just don't have time to go over all of this. We need to tighten up these borders. We need to get our act together as a country. We need to protect the American people. And I'm telling you right now, as an independent with conservative values, I do not feel safe. under Joe Biden's immigration policies and immigration leaderships. Even though there's some things that I agree with him that he's done, I do not feel safe on what he's doing right now currently. And if you ask me, what is the biggest issues you have right now? One would be abortion, because I am a conservative, and the other would be illegal immigration. Ladies and gentlemen, we will get into abortion on another show, and I'm going to go through everything, my belief system, the law, what Arizona did, and I'm going to talk about all of it. And it's a very sensitive topic that drives a lot of people crazy, but I will touch base on that. And by the end of the show, you will have no doubt what I believe. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's go to the next soundbite. Are you ready?
Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. This morning, the court ruled on yet another abortion case, temporarily allowing emergency abortions to continue in Idaho, despite that state's restrictive ban. Former President Trump, you take credit for the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, which returned the issue of abortion to the states.
Correct.
However, the federal government still plays a role in whether or not women have access to abortion pills. They're used in about 2/3 of all abortions. As president, would you block abortion medication?
First of all, the Supreme Court just approved the abortion pill, and I agree with their decision to have done that, and I will not block it. And if you look at this whole question that you're asking, complex but not really complex. 51 years ago, you had Roe v. Wade, and everybody wanted to get it back to the states. Everybody, without exception. Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives. Everybody wanted it back. Religious leaders. And what I did is I put 3 great Supreme Court justices on the court, and they happened to vote in favor of killing Roe v. Wade and moving it back to the states. This is something that everybody wanted. Now, 10 years ago or so, they started talking about how many weeks and how many this, getting into other things. But every legal scholar throughout the world, the most respected, wanted it brought back to the states. I did that. Now the states are working it out. If you look at Ohio, it was a decision that was an end result that was a little bit more liberal than you would have thought. Kansas, I would say the same thing. Texas is different. Florida is different. But they're all making their own decisions right now. And right now, the states control it. That's the vote of the people. Like Ronald Reagan, I believe in the exceptions. I am a person that believes. And frankly, I think it's important to believe in the exceptions. Some people, you have to follow your heart. Some people don't believe in that. But I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. I think it's very important. Some people don't. Follow your heart. But you have to get elected also, and because that has to do with other things. You got to get elected. The problem they have is they're radical because they will take the life of a child in the 8th month, the 9th month, and even after birth. After birth, if you look at the former governor of Virginia, he was willing to do this. He said, we'll put the baby aside and we'll determine what we do with the baby, meaning we'll kill the baby. What happened is we brought it back to the states, and the country is now coming together on this issue. It's been a great thing.
Thank you. President Biden?
It's been a terrible thing, what you've done. The fact is that the vast majority of constitutional scholars supported Roe when it was decided, supported Roe. And that's this idea that they were all against it is just ridiculous. And this is the guy who says the state should be able to have it. We're in a state where in 6 weeks, you don't even know whether you're pregnant or not, but you cannot see a doctor and have him decide on what your circumstances are, whether you need help. The idea that states are able to do this is a little like saying we're going to turn civil rights back to the states, let each state have a different rule. Look, there's so many young women who have been, including a young woman who just was murdered, and he went to the funeral. The idea that she was murdered by an immigrant coming in. They talk about that, but here's the deal: there's a lot of young women who are being raped by their in-laws, by their spouses, brothers and sisters, it's just ridiculous, and they can do nothing about it. And they try to arrest them when they cross state lines.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have to end this show. I really don't want to. We're already over an hour. But I do want to say something. This abortion issue is a serious issue, and I take it very seriously. Joe Biden goes off into the weeds and starts rambling about family rape. He breaks down in the middle of the debate and talks about Medicare. He actually forgets where he's at. And when I look in Biden's eyes, he absolutely becomes terrified in not knowing where his surroundings are at. He has a legitimate cognitive dementia episode where he does not know where he's at for a few seconds and then he snaps back into reality. Trump, over the last 10 years, has basically morphed and altered his pro-choice stance to a pro-life stance. And I do believe Trump believes what he said. But at the same time, Trump is playing a political card and dancing politically astute very, very, very well. What is he doing? He's playing politics. What is Biden doing? He's playing politics. As an American, let me make it clear, I am not happy with either of these candidates, their history of criminality, what is happening with Hunter Biden, what Trump was convicted over, whether you call it a puppet court or not, his personal dealings with his morality, how he did Melania. I am not happy about any of this stuff. And ladies and gentlemen, until we get serious as a country, as a people, and demand better for our politicians, we will simply not get any better. And until then, our country is in political grave danger. And democracy is teetering on a toothpick. So, ladies and gentlemen, I do not have time to go any further. Please click the link. Please donate. Please leave a review. You keep the lights on and the plumbing going. Ladies and gentlemen, become a partner of the show, and I would really appreciate it. This is Joshua Kapia, host of the Patriot News Hour. Until we meet again, God bless you and God bless the USA.